shot makes it 4-4.
Well, all winter long, you have to think about your last outing, and it wasn't that good for Clayton.
Bellinger with a big 3-run blast. The Dodgers retake the lead at 7-4. It's gone!
Correa hit it a mile high, and the Astros have extended the lead.
Yasiel Puig, a 2-run shot. It is now 12-11. Base hit into center field, and the Dodgers have tied it at 12.
That's in the air to left. The throw to the plate, not inside. Astros win. Astros win.
Alex Bregman is being mobbed by third base.
5 hours later, we had another classic World Series game. Hey, welcome to SI Now. Tons to get into on this Monday, but let's start with baseball. Albert Chen, good enough to join us. Robin Lundberg here as well. Gentlemen, a World Series record. 22 home runs have been hit in this series. 14 of those have either tied or changed the lead in a game. Has this been the most exciting World Series we've ever seen?
It sure feels like it. I mean, this is insane. I mean, here we are, I don't know, on a Monday morning, and I mean, to digest that game last night is incredible. The one thing I will say is after that Cubs win last year in Cleveland, that incredible Game 7, you know, we were probably talking about, was this the greatest series ever, given all the ramifications? But the thing is, we're through just 5 games here. 2 of them are undeniably all-time classics. Last night, I mean, look, I mean, I don't think this is just recency bias. That was an all-timer, a game for the ages, just incredible. Obviously, there's 1, maybe 2 more games left, so we'll see what happens. But man, if we have another game like that, I mean, there's no debate. This is the greatest series of all time.
Yeah, I think that last year was so much about the history and the Cubs breaking their curse. This year, I feel like we're just watching the best 2 teams in baseball, and it's no question. Meanwhile, there is a question, though, about the actual balls that are being used. Our own Tom Verducci reporting that the World Series baseball slicker than the regular season baseballs, which impacts the slider pitch the most. Even Lance McCullers Jr. said he could tell the difference between a regular season and a postseason baseball while he was blindfolded. So, Albert, if it turns out that the baseballs are very different from the ones they were using in the regular season, does it cut a little to the integrity of what we're watching right now?
You know, that's a great question. What I will say is every World Series has its quirks. I mean, whether you want to talk about weather, hot or cold, you want to talk about ballparks. I mean, every series is a little bit different. And look, I mean, this has been a crazy, insane, incredibly exciting World Series. And I'd say, like, you know, adding to the drama of sort of the droughts of the 2 teams and the potential Hall of Famers. I mean, if you want to throw in a conspiracy theory in there, why not? I mean, I'm all for it. And, you know, does it taint the integrity of the game? I mean, I think it's clear this doesn't help either team, give one team an edge over another. So absolutely not.
You know, more to that a little bit. I've probably heard the phrase juice balls more in the last couple of weeks than I have in my entire life. And you see some of these fly balls that typically you would think would be fly balls leaving the park. Do you believe that the baseballs are in fact, quote unquote, juiced?
Well, I think there's plenty of evidence at this point. I mean, you can talk to sabermetricians, even baseball physicists. Tom Verducci, are you going to dispute him? I mean, and you looked at the photos from his article side by side, these 2 baseballs. These balls are different. Now, are they juiced? I mean, I think that it kind of implies sort of an intent of making these games like high scoring, and they're different. And I think this brand of baseball is very different from what we've used to being seen. But like, you know, again, I go back to the fact that this doesn't give an edge to either team, so I don't have a huge problem with it.
But does it give an edge, though, to specific pitchers? Because if one pitcher, like a Yu Darvish, tends to rely more on his slider, and if he can't throw it as effectively as he would, doesn't that actually impact not just him, but everything?
No, absolutely. And I think like a team that has more maybe slider-specific pitchers, I mean, the Astros closer, Ken Giles, relies on his slider. He's been horrific during this. Yeah, absolutely lit up. So that's a great point, and you know, I'm sure someone will dissect, you know, whether this has given an edge to the Astros or the Dodgers. But I think, again, broader picture, I don't think it necessarily gives an edge to one team.
Yeah, I promise there'll be an expose of some sorts afterwards, whether it was Major League Baseball trying to make the games more entertaining. Perhaps they've succeeded. What about a guy like Clayton Kershaw, though? Forgetting the specification of the type of pitch you throw, his reputation seems to be on the line with every postseason start. Will all of this figure into the context of that, or is he just going to be labeled a postseason failure again?
Oh, I think it figures in massively into the context of it. I mean, that was a huge game last night, and I think that he's going to have another chance, probably, maybe in a Game 7 if there is one. But you have a sample size now of over 100 innings in the postseason, and he's just not the same pitcher as he is during the regular season. Is it unfair? Absolutely. It's completely unfair. But I think the argument of small sample size is you throw that out the window. He's pitching against better teams. Look, he's still an all-time great. But, again, these baseballs, they kind of muddle the conversation a little bit. But Kershaw, I mean, his legacy, maybe it looks a little bit more different when the series is over, but I think there's some big questions, certainly about his postseason performance.
Is it really unfair, though? I mean, we do talk about guys and their postseason careers throughout sports, especially when you're the all-time greats. I mean, Kershaw has, it's almost a statement of fact, been worse in the postseason than he has been in the regular season. Is it unfair to point that out?
I think it's a little unfair because, look, Game 1, he was spectacular. So I think that, and you win certain games in a series and they're of equal value at the end of the day. And he was great in Game 1. He wasn't so great in Game 5. So, how do you weigh sort of those games? And I think that we give kind of, maybe we add kind of more significance to games that, maybe don't deserve to be so. But he was terrific in Game 1. And if you look at his resume, he's been really good in certain postseason games that have meant a ton.
So how does Dave Roberts use him moving forward? I mean, if this gets to a Game 7, what's Kershaw's role going to be?
I mean, you don't hesitate to use him. I mean, he's the greatest pitcher that's pitching right now. He's an all-time great. And the bottom line, going forward now, the big question is the bullpen. And there's absolutely no confidence in any of the guys in the Dodgers bullpen. You can talk about Brandon Morrow, who was so great in the season. And now, after last night, do you really want to go to him? Ross Stripling, I think there are big questions. Even Kenley Jansen, an all-time great regular season. I would be very nervous if I see him on the mound going forward. Kershaw is as good as it's going to get. And look, if you're Dave Roberts and you lose with Kershaw on the mound, I think you sleep a little, you sleep okay at night. I think that's the way you want to go out.
Of course, Yu Darvish, we mentioned perhaps having trouble with the slider. Even that said, with their backs against the wall, should the Dodgers consider starting Darvish over Rich Hill?
That's a great question. They should absolutely consider it. We saw how much confidence the Dodgers have in Rich Hill. 4 pretty good innings, and he's out of the game. So we're going to see Darvish in Game 6. So it's a matter of, do you want to see him at the beginning of the game? Do you want to see him sort of in the middle in high leverage situations? I think for me, starting Hill is fine. You're not going to get 6, 7, 8 innings out of him. Maybe you're thrilled if you do. Darvish is going to be in this game. He's going to pitch some big innings, and I don't know. He gives up a homer. We're just going to go back to the baseballs that are.
People are giving up homers. Most ever in a World Series. Clayton Kershaw has given up the most ever, in the postseason. As far as the MVP of this series so far, who you got?
So far, I've got Alex Bregman. He was the youngest American League player to hit a home run early in the series. 23 years old. It's been 22 years since someone as young as him has hit a home run in the American League. And then he hits a game winner, and he had 2 spectacular throws that were just tremendous. He's played great defense. Alex Bregman is the MVP so far, but there's still a lot of series to be played.
Well, you can look anywhere for a World Series MVP, a lot of places. One of them, though, is also Yuli Gurriel. Of course, he was suspended now 5 games in 2018 for the racist comment, the racist gesture after hitting that home run off of Yu Darvish. Could this come back to haunt Rob Manfred, the commissioner, the fact that he deferred the suspension of Gurriel when many people believe he was warranted a suspension in Game 4?
Yeah, look, that was obviously a huge hit last night that completely changed the game. I would say that Manfred's decision on the surface was absolutely the right one. 5 games, it seems like an appropriate number to penalize him in the World Series. I think you would have heard a lot of outcry then. But look, I mean, if this guy has a big hit in game 6 or 7, I think the conversation changes a little bit. I think at the end of the day, Manfred made the right move. It's a very, very complicated decision that he's dealing with here. And I don't know. I mean, I think that right now, I think it looks like he made the right decision.
Do you feel like Gurriel should have been suspended at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think he should have been. But I do agree with his decision not to influence the World Series. But I think that, 5 games at the beginning of the season next year sends a message that that's just not the right thing to do. And I think it was appropriately kind of harsh.
Albert Chen, we're looking forward to game 6, maybe game 7. Who knows? The series has delivered in every possible way. We appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks.
It was easily one of the best games of the year. Seattle pulls out a last-second win over the Texans. The Pro Bowler and co-host of Tiki and Tierney on CBS Sports Radio, Tiki Barber here on a Monday. Okay, did we learn more about the Texans or more about the Seahawks in that game?
Well, I think the Seahawks, we've always known who they were. Russell Wilson has been this way since he came into the league and surprised everyone as a starter and won a Super Bowl. Their O-line stinks this year, but it doesn't matter. He still finds ways to get the ball downfield, and his receivers pick him up. Even though we don't know them, they're not going to make Pro Bowls, so to speak, but they always pick him up and come up with huge catches. I think we learned a lot about the Houston Texans, really their head coach, Bill O'Brien, and his desire to get cute. And his desire to try to do things that aren't typical. I'm old school in a way where I say, if you're not stopping what I'm doing, I'm going to keep running what I'm doing until you stop it. In this case, as this game came down the line, he started to put in some trick plays and some motion and handing the ball off, led to a big loss of yardage, which put them behind the 8 ball and forced them to give the ball back to Seattle. Now, we know Russell Wilson in that situation is kind of like the Tom Brady's of the world, or even Eli when he was at his prime. He's going to move the ball downfield, and he's going to get in the scoring position, and he's likely going to score, especially when your defense is exhausted, as we saw that Houston Texans on the winning touchdown to Jimmy Graham. I mean, they were just going through the motions.
On one side, you have Russell Wilson. We know what he's capable of, elevating his teammates, an escape artist. I've heard some comparisons on the other side of Deshaun Watson to Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an apt comparison, or is there a better one?
They're very similar because they move well out of the pocket. You run them outside of pressure because sometimes their line gives way, and you allow him to make plays, whether it's with his legs, which we saw one time running down I think it was right sideline. He had to get rid of the ball. He had to get 11 yards. He set up his blocker, drilled the DB. He gets the first down. Those are the type of things that Russell Wilson has always done. I think he's also very similar to what we saw in RG3 in RG3's first year, where he did a lot of that read zone option, gave him opportunities to expand the interior line for the running backs because you never know if he's keeping the ball and going around the edges. But I think he's a better passer. Right, he's a magician, right? The touchdown that he threw, the Lamar Miller, where he didn't see the blitzer, got spun around, stood on his feet, almost fell down, and then dimed it for 2 yards to Lamar Miller. Most quarterbacks don't make that play. His awareness of his receivers is something that is amazing, and he really has a chance to become the face of the NFL if he keeps growing the way that he's done in his rookie season.
Okay, to that point, if you're starting a franchise and you need a quarterback for the next 10 years, do you take anyone over Watson?
Maybe Carson Wentz, only because he's not going to run. You worry about Deshaun Watson getting hurt. I don't think he will because I think he's smarter than that. You saw a couple of times when he gets outside of the pocket, he's not trying to cut back in and be a running back like RG3 was. He's going to take it out of bounds, get what he can, and be smart with his body. But Carson Wentz has just been amazing. We've seen it all season long. I mean, this game notwithstanding against the 49ers, he makes all the right decisions. He's big, he's strong. He's got 2 great quarterbacks, former quarterbacks, and Doug Peterson and Frank Reich as his offensive coordinator and head coach, respectively. So he's able to grow each and every week. Like any mistake that he makes, he doesn't make it again because he's learning the right way. So maybe Carson Wentz, but I love Deshaun Watson.
Now, of course, another aspect of this game, the comments that Texans owner Bob McNair made, and a lot of Texans players participating in a protest before the game. We often often hear about how NFL teams don't want distractions, but between this and Jerry Jones's comments a few weeks ago, is it fair to say that the owners may be creating more distractions than the players?
You know what the problem is with owners sometimes? They sometimes like to hear themselves speak and talk, and instead of being contemplative or forcing these meetings to be private, which is almost impossible in 2017, they're expressing their opinions, and they're not always on the same page. I think if you even go back to the collective bargaining agreement, one of the big issues was that the owners couldn't decide on how to split revenue. And so now we get to this major inflection point in the National Football League where this protest movement has started to affect how people are perceiving the league and its players and the owners, and they don't know what to do because they've never faced it before. And so the high-powered owners like Jerry Jones, they're speaking and they're saying, this is what we need to do. We're going to force guys not to do this, and I have to take the distraction myself. We're going to do that. And some of these other owners who aren't used to speaking publicly but have to address it because players on their team are protesting, they get caught, right? Thinking but not saying the correct thing. And so, yeah, they've become a little bit of a distraction. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know that's something the league has to address in the short term. Otherwise, the perception is just going to keep deteriorating of the league in total.
We're really interested to see, and I'm interested to see if players now moving forward would say, you know what, if I have my choice, I'm not going to play for the Texans. I'm not going to play for Washington. I'm not going to play for Dallas. If all being equal and I have my choice of going somewhere, maybe I wouldn't choose one of those teams now that the owners have shown a little bit of their true colors.
Well, the only way that I'll mitigate that is because money ultimately determines where you end up playing. Right? It's one thing to stand on principle. It's another when your livelihood is based on going to one of these teams. Now, look, I don't know Bob McNair, but I don't think that he is a bigoted or racist person. I think he said the wrong thing. He convoluted a cliche, and the reason the cliche makes sense is because inmates running an asylum implies craziness. Right? There's just nuts going on. We can't allow these nuts, this crazy type of situation to get into control. But when you flip it and turn it into inmates running a prison, it creates this. Are we talking about African Americans who obviously have a higher percentage of our incarcerated population compared to athletes who are also primarily African American? It just created this false dialogue, which I don't think he was trying to get at, but he messed it up, and it caused an outroar.
And we can absolutely understand why.
Yeah,
Not only that, add on top of it, Daniel Snyder saying 96% of Americans are in favor of players standing, which is just absolutely not true.
It's absolutely a falsehood.
Okay, we also know that there was supposed to be a meeting today that was going to take place between players and owners. That meeting has been canceled. This is something we don't talk about very much, but it's the NFL trade deadline, and it's actually happening tomorrow. Now, we heard some reports that perhaps Jimmy Graham was on the trading block.
He's not going anywhere.
Okay, but should he?
No,
because the Seahawks do need another offensive lineman. They could use one.
Yeah.
They have a lot of weapons in terms of pass catchers. I mean, would they be smart to put Jimmy Graham on the block?
The difference in the National Football League and with Major League Baseball or the NBA is that salaries can kind of be fluctuate. Like they can fit, right? You can make it fit, even if you're up against the cap. We'll just pay a little bit of a luxury tax, right? We'll be okay. In the National Football League, you're constrained by the salary cap. Now, the reason that the Seahawks haven't put any resources into their offensive line is because they spent it elsewhere, right? They've had, the Richard Shermans of the world, even Russell Wilson with his extended contract extension. They're up against the cap, so it's not like they don't want good offensive linemen. They just can't afford them. And so any of these trades, whether it be Brown from the Houston Texans or even the kid from, I can't remember his name now, from the Buffalo Bills.
Cordy Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn from the Buffalo Bills. I'm not sure they can make it fit without trading away other assets. And in the NFL, you can't do 4 or 5 person trades at this point in the season and be viable.
Another story, Martellus Bennett head to social media and said it likely is his last year this year. Do you think that is the case? And as someone who, went away from the game perhaps a little early.
Yeah.
You might have some perspective on the timing of his decision.
He's 10 years in like I was. At some point, if you start losing the passion for the game, and I don't know if it's injury related or if it's just he has other things that are interesting to him, which I'm sure he does, knowing how he and his brother have been very active in the social causes that we've been talking about all season long, really for the last 2 seasons. I don't think he'll regret it. I think if he really is losing his passion for the game, he should go do something else. The timing is what it is. You know, someone asks a question, you find out what it is. When I did it back in 2006, I was eviscerated, at least in New York I was, because people thought that I was cashing it in. That wasn't the case, right? I was just ready to do something else. It came out that it would be my last season. I think voluntarily getting ahead of it is a good thing. It makes you focus. I mean, I was so focused on having my best year in 2006 that it actually made me better. I think Martellus Bennett may feel the same way.
I think that's the double-edged sword that caught you, is that you said you were retiring and then you were great. And then people were saying, well, he's got all this left in the tank. Why would you retire now? We talked about the Eagles. 7-1, look like the best team in the NFL. If they have an Achilles heel, though, what is it?
Their left tackle. Jason Peters is down now, obviously, for the season, and Vaitai has to now start. He got hit probably 10 times. 3 of those were sacks last week. They already have 22 sacks on the season, the Philadelphia Eagles of Carson Wentz. And so if I'm going to be cautious about something with the Philadelphia Eagles, it is the pounding that Carson Wentz is taking. Now, again, as we said earlier, he's a big kid, right? He can withstand it. I think they're smart. They're going to start, or Reich and Doug Peterson are going to start, I think, coaching this team up on how to handle the blitz, right? At least how to get the ball out of your hands when the blitz, side adjustments, reads, things of that nature, because he's getting hit too much. It hasn't affected yet. But it could. I mean, football is a game of attrition. The more hits you take, the worse off you feel. And we don't want him feeling poorly if you're an Eagles fan sitting at 7-1 and in complete control right now of the division and really of the conference.
Yeah, the Eagles look like they could be the class of the NFL, maybe definitely the class of the NFC, clearly the class of the NFC East. What about the NFC South? Who's going to take that division?
Oh, this one's interesting, man. I would say, you know, the New Orleans Saints, who have won 5 in a row, they lost their first 2 games, and then they've just ripped off win after win after win. Now, they almost gave the one away to the Chicago Bears this weekend. But I'm going to say Carolina. And it's odd for me to say it because when I look at their offense, I look at Cam Newton, and there's, you know, I'm not talking to the media. I mean, I don't feel, you know, good today, so it's going to affect the way our team plays. I mean, there's so much like of a roller coaster emotionally that's going on with their offensive leader, and I feel like it's transitioning onto the football field, right? That's how they play as well. But their defense is fantastic, right? They're top 2-3 defense in the National Football League, and ultimately, at the end of the day, defense always wins. I think they'll figure this out offensively, the Carolina Panthers. The Saints are better defensively, but they're still reliant heavily on their offense. So I think the Panthers are situated correctly. We talked about the Atlanta Falcons last week. They can't score when they need to, and they're an odd team this year, despite being one of the top 5 teams in total offense. They're just an odd team this year. So I'm going to say Carolina in the South.
Yeah, very interesting with Atlanta having to play in the driving rain at MetLife Stadium. Not sure what the weather's going to be like on Thursday when the Jets host the Buffalo Bills. They're 5-2. Now, they still have to play the Patriots twice. They still have to go to Kansas City.
Yep.
But do you see the Bills as a legitimate playoff team, or is it too early?
Ask me after week 12. They got 4 more games that I need to evaluate, and 3 of them are on the road, at the Jets, at Kansas City. I forget
New Orleans.
New Orleans, at New Orleans. Well, New Orleans is home.
Yeah.
And so if they get through these next 3 or so games, then I believe that we can say they're for real. Right? It's just hard at this point. 1, because of the division they're in with the New England Patriots. And 2, they've won the games they're supposed to win. Now, if they go win the games they're not supposed to win, like at Kansas City, then we'll start saying, yeah, this team is real. Now, it's odd how they've done it, right? They jettisoned some of their best players. Sammy Watkins, Marcel Darius, they just got rid of. But this team, without some of those distractions, I don't want to label those guys as distractions, but they were distractions because of injuries and et cetera. Sean McDermott has been able to get this young group of players buying into exactly what he wants, and you're seeing it show up each and every weekend. The beauty of it is you have a quarterback in Tyrod Taylor who people may not believe in, but he doesn't make mistakes. He's got 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions on the season, and he's a playmaker when you need to. And you couple that with Shady, who had a great day this past weekend, 151 yards and a big touchdown. They can win almost any game, especially with their defense playing as well as it is, especially in the red zone.
We called you Tiki Damas last week.
Got close.
You got close.
You were right there. I put you on the spot to pick the Chargers over the Patriots.
Got really close. I mean, I picked them also. We have a 6-pack of picks on Tiki and Tierney. So I picked them +7. And I was like, come on.
Okay, so despite
Travis
that, it was
Benjamin.
only a couple plays where the Chargers were right in there with the Patriots. Do you have a prediction for us for this week, Tiki Damas?
I don't know because there's not that many games that I'm looking at that's going to say, well, this one's going to matter, this one's going to matter, this one's going to matter. But I know the conversation this week is going to be about the team we were just talking about, the Buffalo Bills, and the job that Sean McDermott has done up there. He's not a marquee head coaching name, right? Before he got that job, I mean, maybe 10% of the people in this country knew who he was. In the football-loving world knew who he was. But he's exercising an unbelievable effect on that Bills team.
Yeah, and those 10% of people were all located in Western New
Yes,
York.
yes.
Maybe in South Carolina, too, or North Carolina. Tiki, thank you so much. Always appreciate having you here on a Monday to talk about the week in the NFL.
Thank you, guys.
See you next week. Senior college football writer Andy Staples joining us from Gainesville, and that is where Jim McElwain and the Gators have decided to mutually part ways. Andy, McElwain had a record of 22-12, 2 straight trips to the SEC championship game, but athletic director Scott Strickland said of McElwain's firing, "This isn't about wins and losses, and I'll just leave it at that." So what was this about?
He said it wasn't all about wins and losses. It was mostly about wins and losses. Blowout losses to Alabama and Florida State in the last 2 seasons, at the end of the last 2 seasons. And also the more recent troubles of lost 3 in a row in the SEC. Clearly the quarterback hasn't developed. Clearly the offense isn't getting any better. This is a guy who was brought in as an offensive guru. So that's a problem. But then there was other weird stuff. There was the deal last week where he said he got death threats and that his family got death threats and players got death threats. And then when the administration asked him to elaborate, he said, "Nah, I'm good." Well, you can't do that. You got to tell your bosses what's going on. And that was kind of the final straw with some other stuff that basically McElwain questioning Florida administration's commitment to football, the Florida administration not liking that very much. Scott Strickland, remember, didn't hire McElwain. Jeremy Foley did. Scott Strickland got to Florida in October of last year, almost immediately began working on a contract extension for McElwain. And then after the bowl game, McElwain is saying, well, we'll see about the commitment to football. That did not sit well. And that was kind of the opening salvo that really started to fracture the relationship, and it just got worse from there.
Of course, Strickland very positive about Randy Shannon, the defensive coordinator, former Miami head coach, who's now the interim head coach. Can he win the job, or if not, who are the likely replacements for McElwain?
I don't think Shannon is a candidate for the job. Dan Mullen worked with Scott Strickland at Mississippi State. They had a good working relationship, and Mullen obviously was Urban Meyer's offensive coordinator at Florida, so you got to put his name on the list. One name I would put on there is Willie Taggart at Oregon. He's a Bradenton, Florida native. He coached at the University of South Florida. He's a guy that knows how to recruit in this state, and that's something that I think people are overlooking when they look at who might be the best guy for this job. You really need to be able to recruit the state of Florida. McElwain's biggest problem was not X's and O's. It was Jimmy's and Joe's. He was not a great recruiter, and their talent level was not what it needed to be to win the kind of championships that Florida expects to win. Willie Taggart might be able to change that. Another one is Scott Frost at UCF. He's kind of the hot mid-major guy, but I don't know if Scott Strickland's going to go mid-major. He may go Power 5. The other potential one that I think they should just try to throw a bunch of money at is Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech. He might not take the job. He may feel like he's got a very good job right now and not leave, but that's a guy who would come in and succeed at a place like Florida, and he's been great with quarterbacks everywhere he's been. In fact, Paxton Lynch, the guy who helped him win a lot of games at Memphis, well, he wanted to go to Florida, but Florida wouldn't offer him a scholarship. So it's funny how all this sort of works out.
You know, a name that always moves the needle is Lane Kiffin, who's also coaching in the state of Florida right now, Florida Atlantic. Why do you say no?
No, they're not hiring Lane Kiffin. No. They're not. As much fun as that would be, Joey Freshwater in Gainesville, it ain't happening.
But why not, Andy?
Lane Kiffin does not work well with some other people sometimes, and his reputation precedes itself. And I don't see Scott Strickland being the type of person who wants to work day by day with Lane Kiffin.
Andy Staples, senior college football writer, also GIF creator. No. We're turning that one as we speak. Andy, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
We're joined now by SI College football analyst Pete Mundo, and as you just heard, some problems for Florida. Big problem with Georgia, though, very recently. Is Georgia now the biggest threat to knock off Alabama?
They are, Robin, but mostly because of what the rest of the SEC looks like. You look at the schedule, Alabama is playing LSU this weekend. You think, all right, 2 top 25 teams, rivals, they're a 3-touchdown favorite. That's how good this Alabama team is. I've always said Georgia has become Alabama light in many ways. Great defense, really good running game. Problem is this, Jake Fromm. Is the freshman quarterback going to be able to beat Alabama in an SEC title game? He's only thrown for over 102 yards once in his past 4 games. Threw 7 passes this past weekend. Alabama's got the best run defense in the country. How are they going to beat that? I think they're the best chance, but I don't know how good a chance they actually have.
Well, speaking of not a freshman quarterback, a very seasoned quarterback, it seems like J.T. Barrett's been at Ohio State forever. He should probably graduate with a doctorate of some kind, but we should give him a lot of credit because he had 16 straight completions in Ohio State's comeback win over Penn State. Barrett now 25 touchdown passes, just 1 pick on the season. Where is he now in the Heisman race?
I put him at 3rd, Maggie. I still put Saquon Barkley at 1. They're still having a great season. He took the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. People forget that in the game against Ohio State. So I'd go Barkley, then Baker Mayfield, who's having a really good season, 23 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He's got 2 big games coming up, Oklahoma State and then TCU. He can have that Heisman moment we all talk about. So then I would go to J.T. Barrett. Great season, but he lost to Baker Mayfield, looked really bad in that game 6 weeks ago. We were just talking about whether or not J.T. Barrett was the guy for Ohio State. So I'd put him in that 3 spot. Lamar Jackson's fallen off. Louisville has really had a tough go of it recently. So I'll go Barkley, Mayfield, and then Barrett.
What about Ohio State in general? What's the outlook for them in terms of college football playoff and beyond?
Well, they're in good shape for the Big Ten. They right now are in charge in the driver's seat in that East Division. They'd have to get by Wisconsin most likely in that Big Ten title game. But then it comes down to if Oklahoma is a 1-loss Big 12 champion, Ohio State's a 1-loss Big 10 champion, Oklahoma beat them in September. So how does that factor in? I've seen a lot of people say Ohio State's in the playoff right now. I don't know how you do that. They've lost to Oklahoma already, and people saying, well, now Ohio State's better. You can't play that game. If not, what's the point of playing these non-conference games? There's no point in it if that's where you're going to make the case on.
Now, that was a marquee win, of course, over Penn State. For Penn State, a tough loss. Are they still in the playoff mix?
I don't see how. Now, last year, we saw this where Ohio State got into the playoff without making the Big Ten championship game. I don't think they're going to make that mistake again simply because last year you had 3 one-loss teams with the undefeated Alabama. You had Clemson, Washington, Ohio State. The only debate was Penn State or Ohio State. Right now, you look at Notre Dame as 1 loss. The ACC has a 1-loss team, also an undefeated team in Miami. The Big 12's a mess right now. So I don't see how a non-conference champion this year, as it sets up right now, could make the college football playoff.
I think the craziest thing would be if Georgia somehow beats Alabama in the SEC championship game. You have to put Georgia in. Then you put Alabama in because they're Alabama. And then if Notre Dame keeps winning, they go in. And then who's the 3rd team?
Well, the interesting part there is the weakest resume would be Alabama's.
I know.
That's the craziest part of that. I don't know if the committee has the gall to do that, but it would be the resume the weakest one of the bunch.
Well, I mean, Saban can't really hurt you outside of the football field, right?
That is true.
He kind of controls the weather.
Are they a draw to the casual, Alabama?
Oh, I think so.
I mean, they bring in a lot of fans.
They become the New York Yankees in that respect. You want to see them either lose or win big. So I still think there is that draw.
Okay, so Notre Dame is like that too. You have people who love them and you have people who absolutely love to hate them. If they win out, is there any way they do not get in?
I think they're absolutely in. I don't think they should be, though, because they're not in a conference. We always talk about you got to be a conference champion. That's supposedly number 1 in the committee's list of important factors. They won't have one. They're not playing the last week of the season when everybody else is playing a conference championship game. But their schedule is really tough. Miami, Stanford still coming up. They've beaten NC State, beaten USC. It's a really tough go of it. And I think they will be in because of that watchability factor as well.
They didn't just beat USC. I mean, they destroyed USC, also Michigan State. Where are they most likely to stumble? If you're Notre Dame, what on the upcoming schedule do you think is really problematic?
at Miami in 2 weeks. That will be 4 straight games of really tough scheduling. USC, NC State, Wake Forest is playing pretty good football. They have them this weekend, and then going on the road for a 4th straight pretty hard game. So that's the one I'm looking at and saying if there's a spot that they're going to stumble and lose a game, that would be it. And one more loss, Notre Dame as a 2-loss team has no chance.
Yeah, Pete Mundo, really appreciate it. Thank you. Wrapping up, I think we got to everything on this crazy Monday. Thanks for rolling along with us. We appreciate it. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, though, SI.com, that's where you have all the latest news and information. And at SI Now Live is where you can find clips from the show on Twitter. Happy Monday, y'all. See you tomorrow.
The Cavs and Warriors lost. We now officially got to everything.